All right, folks, it is 6:31, so we will go ahead and get started in the interest of everyone's time this evening. I'm going to come on camera for just a moment and say hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Holmes. I'm the Tidewater Environmental Justice Coordinator with DEQ, and we also have Chuck Turner. Chuck, would you mind coming on camera for a second?
Certainly. I'm assuming it's going to work. There you go.
There you are. We also have Chuck Turner this evening. And Chuck, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Chuck Turner. I'm with the Office of Air Quality Monitoring at the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. I've been in the air quality business now for about a little over 30 years. So look forward to getting everybody up to speed on where the TAME project is tonight.
Awesome, thank you, Chuck. And then we will go back off camera so that we aren't distracting you guys while we're presenting this evening. So thank you so much for your time this evening. Welcome to the community update meeting for the Tidewater Air Monitoring Evaluation Project, or the TAME project. We're going to go through some updates on where we are with the project, and we also have a guest speaker this evening. So a quick guide for our GoToWebinar controls. Just remember that you can choose your audio preference down here. So if you are having trouble with your computer audio, you can always switch to a phone call and we'll give you the information to call in right here, as well as the access code. And if you would like to ask a question later on, you can mute and unmute using the green and red button right here. You also have the option to use the chat function. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please let us know and we're happy to answer your questions during the webinar and also read them out loud during the question and answer session so other folks can hear what you had to ask and the answer. So please feel free to use that chat, and I'm actually going to ask you to use it in just a moment. So for our meeting agenda this evening, we're going to start with some introductions. So I'm going to let all of our folks on the line from DEQ and NASA introduce themselves so you guys know who's in the room. And I'll also ask folks to please use the chat function to introduce themselves as well. After introductions, we'll go through a brief project background for anybody who might be joining us who hasn't heard some of the information before. We'll be going through a review of our resources as well as a review of where we are on the project. And then we'll stop for questions and move into a presentation from our folks at NASA Langley on the DEVELOP project. So welcome. Please, community members, like I said, add your name and community to the chat. We would love to hear from you and see who's all here today. And we'll also take a time to meet the DEQ staff on the line as well. You've already had a chance to meet Chuck Turner, our Air Quality Monitoring Manager, but I'm also gonna go through the rest of our crew here this evening. So first up, we have Craig Nickel.
Hello, everyone. Craig Nickel, Regional Director for Tidewater Regional Office.
Thanks, Craig. And then we have Danielle Sims. We'll come back around to Danielle. We have Irina Kalos.
Hi, everyone. Irina Kalos, DEQ Communications Team Lead.
Thanks, Irina. Then we have John Brandt.
Good evening, John Brandt. I'm the Tidewater Regional Air Compliance, Air Monitoring, and Enforcement Manager.
Awesome. And then I will allow our folks from NASA to introduce themselves. Amanda.
Yeah, hello, my name is Amanda Clayton and I'm the Science Lead with the NASA Develop Program.
Thank you. And Lauren.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Charles Gleason. I am the Disaster Response Coordination System Process Improvement Capacity Building Lead now, but I was an Associate Program Manager for the Equity Environmental Justice Program up until just a few months ago.
Awesome, thank you. And then Zia. And correct me if I mispronounced your name. I'm so sorry about that. We can't hear you, unfortunately.
It looks like she lost audio, I think.
Oh no.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Sorry. It seemed like it knocked out right after I said it, but it seems like you missed me at all. My name is Amanda Clayton. I'm the science lead with the NASA Develop program. I also live in West Ghent in Norfolk.
Awesome. Okay, that sounds good. And then Danielle, did you want to try and unmute now?
Sure. Hi, my name is Danielle Sims. I'm the Environmental Justice Program Manager at DEQ.
Thank you, Danielle. Awesome. So that is the crew on the line today, and you'll hear a little bit more from our NASA folks in just a couple minutes, and we'll get started with the presentation. So a little bit of project background. The Tidewater Air Monitoring Evaluation Project, or TAME, is a grant-funded study. It's a grant funded by the EPA. And it was awarded to help the EPA evaluate air quality in the communities of the southeast portion of Newport News, as well as Lambert's Point and Norfolk. These were chosen specifically as focal points for community engagement, both because of their proximity to coal terminals and because they're environmental justice communities. Environmental justice communities in Virginia are identified through analyzing the number of people of color that make up a community, as well as the income levels. According to the Environmental Justice Act of 2020, communities such as Lambert's Point and the Southeast community need to be meaningfully involved in projects such as TAME. And these kinds of meetings are designed to help create those opportunities. Our goal is for the community to be heard from the very beginning of this project to help design the most effective study. And community involvement has been key from the beginning. I believe our very first community feedback opportunities for the TAME project began in 2021. So like we said, DEQ has received a grant to study the composition of particulate pollution from coal dust in the ambient air in these two communities. And again, those are Lambert's Point and Norfolk, and the Southeast community in Newport News. We'll be working with community members as well as the Virginia Department of Health to better understand local air quality, develop health assessments, and determine appropriate next steps based on that data. A little bit of history. The Southeast coal terminals here in Newport News had operations begin around the 1880s, and the city really grew around these terminals. There are two operators, Kinder Morgan and Dominion, and CSX delivers coals to both of these private terminals. The Kinder Morgan piers are about 1,200 feet long each, and they can ship about 16 million tons per year, and the Dominion terminal is about 1,100 feet long. And like I said, the presence of these terminals really helped lead to the development of Newport News. And then the Lambert's Point terminal also began operations in the 1880s. Historically, the Lambert's Point coal and rail yard has been a transport area for rail cars exporting coal internationally. So the first arrival of coal cars dates back to about 1885. And shortly afterward, the area began to develop the neighborhoods for the rail yard workers and their families. By the early 20th century, as the coal industry grew, Lambert's Point Rail Yard began exporting more than 2 million tons of coal through their terminal annually. And in 1961, Norfolk Southern increased the export capacity to 48 million tons per year. The increase in capacity did take place prior to the Clean Air Act in 1970. So our project goals here, I will pass over, I think, to Chuck to talk about in detail, but they begin with placing regulatory air monitors in each of these communities.
Yes. So the point of this project ultimately is to gather data on what are called toxics metals, toxics being a category of types of pollutants. And you can see a list of the metals that we'll be looking at there in the middle of the screen. Have those analyzed in analytical method recognized by the Environmental Protection Agency, and get that information to the Virginia Department of Health to do a health assessment on the results that we get. The process, or the way that we're going to do that, is we are going to place what are called PM10 or particulate matter less than 10 micron samplers in each community, along with one PM 2.5 or particulate matter less than 2.5 micrograms in the communities as well. We'll gather the PM10 data primarily because that's the method that EPA has defined for getting these toxic metals. We're going to gather the data over the course of about 18 months. That those filters will be transmitted to the state laboratory to do this analytical work. Then we'll get that data back. We'll present the data to the public, and the data then will go to the Virginia Department of Health to do their health assessment. Our approach here is to try and incorporate the communities into this process. This is the reason we have these frequent public hearings, just to keep people involved, how far along we are, and how we're doing against our goals. Grace, if I could have the next screen, please. So when we started out, we went through the process of getting input from the public as to where they'd like to see the monitors located. From that information, you're looking right now at the Newport News, the original sites that we set out in Newport News. This is obviously the goal of what we'd like to see in terms of getting good representative cross-sectional type of samples. So these are the 5 sites. You can see the representative area is about 4 kilometers in diameter. And it gives an address with it. The ones in green, we are still working on. The ones that are not in green, we're pretty solid on getting those installed. But if I could have the next screen, Grace. So there's other sites that we wanted to do. A couple of them. The one that's designated Site 2, the property owner there withdrew the site as a possible location. So I'm currently in the process of looking for another location in that area to get a representative type of sample similar in location to the original site that we selected. Similar thing with the Site 4. These are both privately owned pieces of property, and we defer to the property owner as to whether they want to join the project or not. The last one, Site 5, the original site that we selected, didn't work out for various reasons, but there's another site very nearby that is owned, and the property is owned by Dominion, and I've spoken with Dominion on a couple of occasions, and they're certainly supportive of this process. I've been working with them on things like getting power and those type things, so we're working out those logistics so I can properly define the specs for our contractor. If I could have the next slide, Grace. All right, so this is right now what Newport News looks like in terms of the specific sites that we have. So we're in pretty good shape. We're moving along on those. The contractor is putting the specs together, and we should get that information here shortly. But as you can see, this is Site 1 and Site 3 from the original goal that we had for putting out the monitoring sites. Grace, if I could have the next slide, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to interrupt you, Chuck, but I did just want to let folks know that when we sent out the meeting announcement, we sent out our proposed coverage maps, and you would have seen this map for Newport News. And so I just wanted folks to know that this is now the updated map based on where we are with site permissions.
Okay, so this is what we had targeted our goal for Norfolk based on the input from the public in terms of monitoring sites, and we're a pretty good position relative to the Norfolk sites. As you can see, some are labeled green here. The Site 2 right now has been pretty solid for us. We've had some changes, modifications that we had to do on these other sites. Grace, if you could go to the next slide. All right, so we've got a site selected on 25th Street and Elkhorn Avenue. We're working with the city right now on the exact placement of that monitoring site. I've been down there and left some information with some of the local homeowners that are near that site, but we are working on the specific location there. We're pretty good on the power source there, so that should be wrapped up here very shortly. There's 26th Street and Bowden's Ferry Road. The contractor got back with me and asked that we change the possible source for the electrical power. So I've been out there and selected another site, and the contractor is looking at that now. And we've been around various spots, Lambert's Point Golf Course, looking for a good location. I met with the HRSD folks, that's Hampton Roads Sanitation District folks that work at the Lambert's Point facility. And I think we've got a pretty good site selected there. That's sort of in the early stages right now. We have to work out some logistics with power, but looks like the 4 sites that we originally targeted for Lambert's Point, we are going to get sites that are very close to what those original locations were going to be. If I could have the next slide, Grace. All right, so this is currently what we have. These are the 3 that are pretty solid. And I didn't show the 4th one, the one site 4, the one near HRSD, simply because it's early on in the process right now. We do have some things to work out relative to the logistics on that one. So we're in pretty good shape in Norfolk and Newport News. We're working on some additional sites, but pretty good shape on both of them in terms of getting the contractor closed in on all the specs and what we need to do to get these installed. So Grace, next slide. I did get asked at I think it was the last public meeting, what these siting requirements are for these monitoring sites. So I just thought I'd go over just a few things that you look for when you're trying to find a good site. What I've shown here, a tree line, that's obviously something that we want to get a back away from. We want to try to get a good free flow of air from all directions around the monitoring site. So there are rules within the federal regs as to our distance away from trees. Trees are a very, very large subcomponent of what are called obstructions, and there are rules about how you locate a monitoring site relative to obstructions. And within that, there's some very specific rules on how you locate a monitoring site if you're near what's called a tree line or a tree barrier, such as this one you see in the picture. Next slide, please, Grace. Buildings. This is just a building when we were walking through Old Dominion, trying to figure out where we wanted to put the site. With buildings, there is a very specific formulation in the federal regulations as to how far we have to get from that. What we're trying to do, again, is get a good 360-degree from every direction flow of air, and buildings are obviously an obstacle to doing that. So we have to make sure that when we are located in a populated area with a lot of buildings, that we meet those distance requirements. And the reason why we're so focused in on these siting requirements is that EPA is going to look at how these monitors were sited in terms of the validity of our data. We have to meet the siting criteria requirements to make sure that we meet the quality assurance requirements of the data that we're generating from this particular project. Grace, next slide, please. And of course, distance from roads is another important thing. In this case, we actually are going to be locating one of the sites, the Dominion sites in Newport News, fairly close to a road, relatively speaking. We're still meeting the siting criteria, but roads are a source of pollutants as well, and we want to make sure that gets included as part of the different monitoring sources, or the different sources that we're monitoring for, and how that impacts our results. But there are specific rules within regulations as to distance from roads to not overly impact the samples that we take, such that the road is overly represented as a source in the filter, the monitored results that we get. So just roughly took everyone through the monitoring sites in both cities and what we look at in terms of siting. Grace, I'm going to call an audible here and let people ask questions at this point if they would like to, and if you want to do it through the chat process, that's fine as well.
Sure, absolutely. If you have a question that you'd like to ask out loud here, raise your hand or go ahead and put it in the chat. Looks like we have one. Looks like we have a few. So first, Chuck, who is the contractor for the air monitors?
We're working through the state's contractor right now. Basically, the state keeps on, and I say contractor, this is the general contractor. They usually subcontract out for the specific work, but it's through a contract that the state has. And the name of the company is Gordian, I believe. But again, that's the general contractor, and then they'll subcontract out for all the specific work. And this works through a general contract the state currently has.
What dates will the air monitors be installed?
Boy, I wish I could give an exact date. We had targeted to start at the beginning of the summer. I'm still thinking that summer is the time that we'll start getting data. Where specifically during the summer that will happen is going to be difficult to project, simply because of the issues that we still have on some of the sites. We're moving pretty well on the ones that we've got definitive support from the landowners and the city. But I think putting a date on those, we obviously want to try to start all the monitors at about the same time. So some of that, the decisions as when we start, is going to be looking at the whole of the project and making sure that we get representative data from a similar time frame from all the monitoring sites. So we're still targeting this summer to get started on most of those monitoring sites. A specific hard and fast date right now would be tough to project.
Thanks, Chuck. Just to clarify, will there eventually be 5 monitors for Southeast Newport News and 4 for Lambert's Point, or is DEQ settling for 2 in Newport News and 3 in Norfolk?
We are trying to get and meet that original target goal that we showed to the public after we went through the process of getting recommended sites from the public. One thing I don't want to do, because of, whenever you get into siting a monitor, you run into things that extend the process. I don't want to get too caught up in preventing the gathering of data because of issues at one specific site. And so the answer to the question is, we are going to do everything we can to make the sites and the monitoring that we do look exactly like we presented to the public. We've already had to modify some locations and everything, but those are our goals. Those are what we're targeting to do, and we're going to be doing everything during this project to make our data gathering look like those original pictures. The one thing you can be certain of, though, is that we are going to site these monitors such that we get representative data that is reflective of the entire community in both cases. That is, reflective of the entirety of Lambert's Point and reflective of the entirety of the Southeast community in Newport News.
Perfect. Thank you, Chuck. Next question we've actually gotten from a couple folks. Why did some of the property owners back out of the project and not want their sites used for air monitors?
I can't really read minds. I'm not quite sure what the motivations were. Some people, I assume, just didn't want to be part of the process of gathering the data. I will say this: nobody indicated that they were against us doing this. They just weren't sure about their own participation in the project. So, like I said, I don't want to guess on what people's motivations are. I didn't take it that there was a problem in terms of the project or people's support for the project. There are just, I'm sure, some site by site kind of considerations that each one of these people had to take into account before they agreed or did not agree to have a site located on their property.
Thank you, Chuck. And then, is the air monitoring project still expected to be completed in late 2026, as previously stated?
Yes, we are still on that target. If that gets changed, the process is I'd have to contact EPA, provide another work plan with the extended date, but that will also be communicated to the public if we get to the point where we don't believe that is going to occur. As I said, I tried to build some flexibility into this. Once we start generating the data and it goes to the Department of Health, we lose somewhat control over the time frame. I don't anticipate that the Department of Health will be problematic in terms of meeting that goal either. So yes, that is still our goal, to get all the data collected and reports or presentations to the public about that data by that time frame.
Thank you, Chuck. We've got a few more questions here, and we'll get through these, y'all, and then keep going and give another opportunity at the end. We had a question, don't you need to look at cumulative effects, i.e. coal yard plus road?
So in the case of Norfolk Southern in Lambert's Point, for example, we are locating two of the monitors very close to points where they are both adjacent to the facility, but also adjacent to the rail traffic that goes into the facility. So in that case, we are looking for that kind of impact. In terms of not wanting the roads to be overly impactful in the analysis, it's not that we won't get that impact. What we want to do, though, is be able to get representative samples for areas where it will reflect the multiple possible impacts from all the sources in the area without, biasing it in one way or the other. We want to make sure that we get all possible sources of air pollution and what that does, but also emphasizing that we will have at least one monitoring site in both communities that we know will be impacted very specifically by the coal dust and the coal operations. So yes, we are getting a cumulative impact because of the number of sites that we're going to have located here. So there won't be any issue relative to not getting representative samples that contain all possible contributors to air quality issues in both communities.
Thank you, Chuck. The next one is, what component of state government is considering the risks to the workers at the actual coal dumping sites? Would that be the Department of Health, Chuck?
Uncertain, Virginia OSHA maybe. That's not a question I can answer right now. Certainly, if you want that question answered, just we can go ahead and get back with that person as to what who is looking at worker impacts. But that is not something that DEQ is looking at here. We are focused on what is called ambient air, which is the open air and maximum in terms of the number of people who are potentially impacted.
Perfect. Thank you, Chuck. Were there opportunities to co-locate with other regulatory monitors?
Yeah, good question. We don't really have a long history of air quality monitoring in these areas. We did do some studies in total particulates in the Norfolk area. There's a lot of work that has been done from a modeling standpoint and from a short-term kind of look at coal dust, but there isn't a great deal of history in either one of these communities, which is why we targeted these communities in the first place, because we were aware of the past history and people's concerns. And that's why we're doing such a focused study in terms of the number of monitors we're putting out there. We want to make sure we get good data that's representative, that covers the entirety of these communities. So co-locating with other monitors, not really an option for us. Internally, we're co-locating at one site in both locations, but co-location with existing monitors was not one of the possibilities that we had when we started looking at this particular monitoring project.
Thank you, Chuck. And then this is our last question for right now, and we'll catch the other ones at the last Q&A, so we make time for our presenters. What is the third site right now in Newport News other than 1 and 3? And we can clarify that, and let me go back as well.
Sure. Yeah, so we're looking at another site around where the number 2 site was, and there's several places we've looked. We haven't gotten past the point of notifying the owners that we want to do this, that type thing. So don't want to project right now the site that's going to replace the old number 2 site. The other one, the old number 5 site, there is a spot of ground there that is owned by Dominion, and Dominion has expressed us support for what we're trying to do there. That particular area where site 5 is in along Terminal Avenue, and it is very close to the fence line of those coal operations at Dominion Terminals and at Kinder Morgan. So we are working very hard to get a good site right there, because that, I think, is what we would call a source specific location. That is, we would get a great deal of information on what is happening at the source, that is at the coal operations from that site. So that is the old number 5 site. We're working on making it the new number 5 site. And as I said, our discussions with Dominion, it's Dominion Electric, not Dominion Terminals. Dominion Electric Power has begun on that, and they are supportive of our efforts.
Thank you, Chuck. And just here to clarify, these are the only 2 that we currently have permissions for in Newport News.
That we're solid on right now, and we are working on at least 2 more.
Yep, thank you. Alrighty, all right, so we will keep rolling here, if that sounds okay to you, Chuck, and then address the rest of the questions at the end. So the other part of the project is kind of a community science angle, which has been working with purple air sensors. And purple air sensors, you guys may have seen them around or heard of them before, hopefully. So they measure airborne particulate matter. Essentially, they use laser counters to count how many particles are in the air in real time, and they can be used to calculate the amount of PM1, 2.5, and 10. And those numbers are just referring to the size or the micron level of the particle. And I'll let Chuck talk a little bit about the accuracy of him as well in terms of those particular sizes of particulate matter.
Do you want me to jump in here?
Yeah, would you mind?
Okay, sure. So the purple air sensors will put out information on what is called PM1, which is ultrafine particulate matter, PM 2.5, which is fine particulate matter, and PM10 as well. As you recall earlier, we talked about from the monitors themselves, we're looking at getting PM10 samples. You just have to understand that those monitors are EPA approved, so to speak. They have what's called a federal reference method number. We know that the data from those PM10 monitors are of a quality that EPA will accept them. Now, the sensors are just that. They're sensors, not regulatory monitors. So the data you get there doesn't go through the process that, say, these monitors will go through to get that federal reference method designation. So it's not that that the purple air sensors don't have value from a data standpoint. They really do. If you look at some of the studies done online, like at South Coast in California, you'll see that these PM 2.5 monitors really are very good in terms of the data that you get in the range of the PM 2.5 to PM1. And they're being used all over the country. If you go to the Purple Air webpage and pull up the map, you'll see that they are being used all over the country, and there are some programs where they include purple air sensors as part of their overall monitoring network. We just want to make sure that people understand that the data we get from our monitors are of a quality that we can do these air toxic studies and everything, and EPA will be accepting of the results, knowing that we followed their siting requirements and their quality assurance requirements. Purple air sensors are good for getting an idea of where the trends are, confirming what's going on, and to give you an idea of where you want to, or how you want to impact, or how air quality may impact your behavior over the course of a day. If we're starting to get some code red from the AQI standpoint type data, then maybe that's something that you would want to look at prior to doing any sort of outdoor activities. So that's the level and the kind of information you get from the purple air sensors relative to the regulatory quality data that we get from the monitors.
Thank you, Chuck. And just a reminder to folks that we have purple air sensors available for residents of Lamberts Point and the Southeast community of Newport News. So if that is something that you're interested in, we would love to work with you to get one installed at your home or your business or whatever it happens to be. Don't hesitate to reach out. And if you aren't in either of those neighborhoods, but you'd still like to learn more about resources around purple air sensors, you can definitely reach out to us about that as well, and we'll make sure that you get the information you need. So we'll talk a little bit about what you might start to see in your communities in terms of what these sites look like. We'll show you two different kinds. This is the first kind of site, and this is a multi-pollutant site. And I'll let Chuck talk a little bit more about that.
So we're going to have one multi-pollutant site in each community. In Norfolk, it'll be at the 26th and Bowden's Ferry Road location. In Newport News, it'll be at the Achievable Dream Tennis Center. When we say multi-pollutant, it's going to have the PM10 monitor, which you see right here, but you also see this trailer will have the PM 2.5 monitor in it. So we'll get PM 2.5 data as well as PM10 data. What you also see right here is what's called a suspended particulates monitor, and we're going to have those as well. Those aren't necessarily numeric data that we're going to get. We're going to be using those to grab samples that we can look at microscopically to determine from a qualitative standpoint what the contributors to the particulate pollution are in those particular locations. And those suspended particulate samplers will be moved to several locations to give us an idea of what that cross section looked like. What are the contributors to the particle pollution, right? But this, you'll see one of these in each community. Multi-pollutant site, we're looking at PM10, PM 2.5 primarily from a data standpoint, and then suspended particulates from a qualitative, what's contributing to the particulates at this particular site. There we go. So this is a nice picture of what the PM10 sampler looks like. This is an older model. It's called a Wedding and Associates. We actually, in submitting our data to EPA, wanted to see if we couldn't purchase samplers specific for this particular project. EPA did not award us enough money to be able to do that. So we as in DEQ have multiple years experience with these samplers. We have a lot of internal expertise. So no issues relative to the data from these. And they also have what's called the Federal Reference Method designation. So they are recognized by EPA as a monitoring system that we can use to get data of a quality that EPA will be accepting of. All right. These are the simple sites though, and as opposed to the multi-pollutant site, these are just a single pollutant site. And most of the sites in both communities will be these single pollutant, just PM10 samplers. And that is because that is what we need to be able to get it to the next step. That is to get the toxics metals data. So The EPA method requires PM10 filtered type data to get the information in terms of the toxic metals. And each site obviously will need electric power. We've got a pretty straightforward method by which we do that, and the contractors right now are looking into that, getting this power. And so each site will be separately metered. We'll be paying our own bills, and there will be operation every 6th day for these PM10 samplers over the course of the 18 months. All right, Grace.
Alrighty. So what else might you see coming next? So like Chuck has been describing, we are working on negotiations to get these sites installed across both communities. And Chuck's been doing a lot of on the ground work to kind of deal with these roadblocks that we've run into. Installation will begin. Hopefully you'll start to notice some of these sites going up in your neighborhood. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call us. We will be updating the webpage and sending out notifications just to let people know as ground installation starts, so folks know what to expect. And we are hoping to plan some groundbreaking celebrations in each of the communities for initial sites, so stay tuned on that. And then once monitoring begins, data will be collected for 18 months. And we did just want to remind folks that the Virginia Department of Health will review the data to produce health assessments for each community. And that data will be made available to the public as it becomes available on a rolling basis. And just a reminder for folks, if you're curious about VDH's role in the project, you can check out our website where we have a presentation from them from October of 2022, I believe, that kind of helps give some insight into what that looks like. If you have any questions, you can always reach out. We would love it if you would like a purple air sensor. Don't hesitate to request one. And we're always interested in project questions. We're going to answer 1 or 2 more questions here and then pass it over to NASA. And then if we don't get to any projects, or excuse me, if we aren't able to get to any of the questions tonight, I'll make sure to follow up afterwards as well. So the first question is, given the socioeconomic factors in these communities, will cumulative impacts be assessed? And I think you kind of already answered this one, Chuck, but. Chuck, if you're talking to us, we can't hear you. Hello? Looks like we're having some
Can you guys hear me
audio.
now?
Yep, we hear you now. There you are.
Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble with the getting the sound. Anyway, could you repeat the question for me, Grace?
Yeah, absolutely. Given the socioeconomic factors in these communities, will cumulative impacts be assessed?
Cumulative impact as a specifically technically defined word, the answer is probably not relative to the context of your question. We are going to be looking at multiple sources of particulate pollution. What we won't be looking at is other types of pollution beyond that. So we are going to be looking at multiple sources of particulates, and we are going to be doing the microscopic work to find out what the different components are. We are going to be doing the analytical work to see what the impact are from those metals that you normally see from coal dust. But in terms of other potential impacts of other pollutants beyond just the particulate range that we're going to be looking at, then I don't believe we're going to be addressing cumulative impact in that particular, within that particular perspective. Have I answered your question?
I will double check the chat and we'll see if we get some feedback on that. Thank you, Chuck.
I don't want to presume, cumulative impact means different things to different people, and I want to keep it as close to the technical understanding of that term as possible. But I just want to make sure that I did address what their concerns of the questioner on that relative to how cumulative impact fits within their understanding.
Thank you. And let me know if that is not the case, and we can definitely follow up with you. This is a good one. Are the monitors really expensive, or is there some reason to only have 5? And this will be our last question.
The monitors we're choosing to use, the PM10 monitors are not that expensive. You have to recognize that each one of the monitors, when they're placed, assuming they meet siting criteria, has an area of representativeness for the samples that are taken. And if you look at those circles, there shows a large amount of overlap. So we are going to be getting good representative data. You know, if you look at those circles and think of that as the area of representation, so to the point where we don't need really any more than that. That won't give us any additional information. What you're looking at is trying to get the number of monitors in there where you can see a difference between the different monitored sites and not so close that you're just getting redundancy.
Perfect. Thank you, Chuck. And there are a couple more questions here that we will address at the very end of the webinar, but we want to make sure that NASA has enough time to tell you about their great project. And so we are going to pass it over to them. And I do think we got a question in the chat that is a good segue. Will NASA Earth satellite data be utilized to further evaluate air pollution impacts? And with that, we will pass it over, and I'm going to change presenters here to Lauren. Is that correct?
Yes, if you can change it to me, and hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep, we can hear you perfectly. Just switch it over to you. Awesome.
Okay, let's see. Can you actually see my screen?
Yes, we can.
We're seeing the presentation. You're seeing this one?
We can see your desktop, your Teams chat, and your.
All right. Let's see. How about that? Is that working?
Yes,
there you go.
That's it.
Cool. Okay, over to you, Amanda.
Great. I think, did we want to do introductions again, or do we feel okay?
Either way.
Okay, well, why don't we just jump in then? You can go to the next slide. So yeah, we wanted to chat, and as Grace said, that was a really, really great segue because we are doing just that. And so we wanted to talk to you about a couple of different things today. First, start with just a little bit of an introduction to, you know, really why we're here and the work that we have planned for this summer and fall. Just familiarizing you a little bit with the NASA Earth Science Division and the different satellite resources that we have. Some efforts that NASA has in equity and environmental justice. We're going to talk specifically about the NASA Develop program, which is the group that myself, Amanda, and Shaw are part of, that has a team this summer and fall that will be working on this issue using satellite data as it relates to the TAME project in air quality and pollution in the region. We have an example of what, you know, some of our projects look like, and so kind of what we can expect to see out of this work, and then also provide some resources if you're interested in kind of exploring any of this further on your own. We'll kind of get you started with some of those resources. So exactly that, how can satellite observations of air quality complement the work that Virginia DEQ is already doing through the TAME project? So that is, you know, really the impetus for our projects. I'm going to talk a little bit further about it in a few slides from now, but really we do these short-term projects that look to demonstrate the utility of NASA satellite data as it relates to environmental decision-making needs of different partner organizations. So whether those be state agencies like the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, local governments, nonprofit organizations, and the like. So at the NASA Develop program, we will have 2 projects, one this summer that will run from June through August, and then we'll have some continued work that starts September through November locally at the NASA Langley Research Center. So next slide.
Okay, so I think it's my turn. So my name is Xia. I'm the program scientist of DEVA program. So I heard about like a lot of discussion, right? Where to choose a site, a lot of concerns. But one more concern is where you see the most impact, where you see the highest concentration of particulate matter pollution, and where people suffer, they have a high social economic impact. So that is where that's how a NASA project is going to help. So here, as I'm going to talk about, we're going to have two projects specifically to work with the community to address a concern from you. So the many type of air pollutions, but in this project, we want to concentrate on the two pollution specifically. The summertime project will look at particulate matter pollution from the coal dust, as you already heard a lot about, right? So, when they have a coal piles, they could have a dust, the wind can blow it everywhere. And because that, people might get black lung disease, like a coal worker, or like a coal mining workers. And because the traffic, right? And we have a coal piles, and we have a trucks coming on the way, and also have is close to the highway. There's another concern from the vehicle exhaust pollution from the traffic. I think I saw a question that we're going to combine them together. Actually, when we measure the PM 2.5, it's harder to distinguish from either from the coal mining or from the coal dust or from the vehicle. But we can help look at both. With that, I think going to next talk about NASA data. So as you might aware, NASA we have a lot of satellite, especially on the Earth science. So you can see each satellite has a name, just like you and me. We have a name, and there's some advantage to use NASA data, satellite data. For example, we can use NASA data to observe and characterize Earth from your computer. You need to go outside, right, and then do the field work and collect information over a large area. We can monitor the trend. We can also combine with instrument data for comprehensive understanding. That's where we work with the DEQ and work with the purple airflow. So you can also visualize through mapping, data plots, heat maps. Again, NASA data are free and open to everybody. Next slide. So as I said, there are many NASA missions, but I want to highlight a few that provide information for health and air quality. Specifically, NASA, we can provide information on the heat, light and night, and fine particle matter, PM, is what you heard about today, and nitrogen dioxide, and ozone, and formaldehyde. So here you see the temperature from the Landsat 9, and the night from the NOAA satellite, and the PM 2.5 from Aqua, and other things from Aura. So you can see NASA data give you the full picture, so you can help you look at local things. I think with that, maybe go to next slide. So yeah, while we combine our satellite data with the local ground instruments, so there are pros and cons for each type of measurement, right? For satellite, we can give you global information, but we have a limitation. We know they only come back every couple of days, and it has limited spatial resolution. For the ground observation, like in the purple area, right? It gives a continuous monitoring and then give you high precision data. But the problem is that it only give you observation in local region, like only 4 kilometer, 1.5 kilometer, the thing you saw. So how can they combine? So as I said, satellite observation can supplement ground observation, give you the whole picture, whole story, in the bigger context. And for the ground observation, can use to validate satellite observation. That's to see with the value we work together, NASA and also Virginia DEQ. I think with that, I'm going to pass that to Lauren. Talk about the
Sure.
project.
So, yep. Thanks, Shao. So to introduce a little bit more about like our programs and the different organizations that are involved in some of this, we wanted to introduce NASA's Earth Science Division. Many people don't know that NASA does Earth Science. A lot of people think of rockets and other launches and things like that, but the Earth Science Division really is studying the Earth to understand it as a system and also use it as a proxy for understanding other planets. And so within the Earth Science Division, there really are 5 lines of business. There's the technology program that's designing kind of new instrumentation and things to put on and building kind of like the satellites out. Flight that actually builds the satellites and puts them up into space. That there are launches involved with that. Then there's the data and computation folks that are collecting all the data and information that's coming from those satellites. You have the research and analysis folks that are using that data to explore how it can answer different kind of science questions. And then there's the applications program, or like Earth Action or Applied Sciences, as we like to call it. And that is really where we're trying to take this data and this research and getting it into the hands of users that can actually apply it to inform decision and action and policy. And so there's this kind of full life cycle that we like to talk about within the Earth Science Division. Also, within kind of the Earth Science Division, there's a few different activities that we want to highlight here. So there's the Equity and Environmental Justice Program. This is a newer program. It was really kind of kicked off in 2021, but it's focusing on how to combine Earth observation data, and I'll speak on it a little bit more on the next slide, but EO data along with kind of socioeconomic data, demographic data, understanding the people that are impacted. We also have the RSET program, which is the Applied Remote Sensing Training and Training Program, which is creating all kinds of different webinars and also in-person training activities that are introducing everything from like the fundamentals of remote sensing to very specific applications related to how you can take the data and actually use it. And then there's the Develop program that Amanda will introduce in a second. So just a little bit more on the EEJ program. Like I mentioned, this began in about 2021. It's really focused on trying to open up access to NASA's data to all communities and make sure that the kind of benefits of what we can see from space is applicable and used by all for policy and for action. And so what we've been doing for the past few years, we've had now 2 solicitations where we're putting out, kind of calls for proposals to fund different work related to various different topics relating to environmental justice. There's also an Indigenous Peoples Initiative that's very focused on connecting Earth observations in tribal communities. And then also a subset of the Develop projects. Amanda will kind of speak to that a little bit more, but there's a subset of Develop projects that are also focused on kind of EJ topics. And so across like this whole portfolio of projects, everything from the kind of funded portfolio to the IPI projects to the Develop projects, there's quite a few different themes. And so you can see those listed here. There's a lot of projects that are focused on things like extreme heat, other various different kind of climate hazards. We've seen a lot related to air pollution, fire risk, and also things like the plumes from fire that also impact air pollution. There's been food insecurity and kind of urban agriculture assessments. Also flooding is a really big problem with like stormwater management, and then just general water pollution. So there's a variety of different topics that all these different projects are exploring how to apply Earth observation data and the trends and things you can see to these different kind of topics and issues. And so just again to dig a little more into the RSET program that I mentioned before, this is a great resource for anybody that's interested in learning about remote sensing and what satellite data can do and how it can be applied. All of their webinars and trainings are provided for free. There is a huge archive of all the different trainings they've ever offered. And they also have some of them are also in multiple languages. But they organize their trainings around thematic areas, which you can see listed at the bottom there. But they also have other topics that they do. So for instance, I believe it's in early June, they have one that's focusing on humanitarian kind of response and how you can use Earth observations for that. So there's a variety of different topics that they touch on. It's definitely worth looking if you're interested in this. And I'll pass it over to Amanda to introduce Develop.
Great, thanks, Lauren. And so the Develop program is the group that is hosting these projects with the Virginia DEQ this summer and fall. We'll say the Develop program is headquartered out of the NASA Langley Research Center, so right in our backyard. But we are going on 26-year program. So we've been doing these types of projects for 26 years now. And our goal is really to be able to connect data to decision makers in kind of a exploratory fashion. And we do this specifically by engaging students and early career researchers to work on these types of issues, which is great. So we consider ourselves to be a dual capacity building program in that we're really trying to build skills to use satellite observations for these sorts of environmental decision-making needs that Lauren was expanding on. And so we work directly with partner organizations on real world problems that can, show the organizations a taste kind of what NASA data can do, maybe how they can use it to impact decision making and action. Again, and also build skills in those students and early career professionals to be able to do this type of work as well. Our projects are very short. They're only 10 weeks, and they're really centered on organizations' decision-making needs. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of who specifically those partners are. We really try to work with interdisciplinary project teams. We know that these projects need people with interdisciplinary backgrounds to tackle them. These types of issues are not just specific to scientists. We need social scientists, policymakers, and things like that to have good holistic kind of decisions. And we'll move on to the next slide. As I mentioned, DEVELOP is a 26-year-old program now, and we do a lot of projects. Because these projects are short-term, they're usually only 10, maybe 20 weeks long. We can do a lot of them and impact a lot of different partner organizations and a lot of different geographic study areas per year. And some of our kind of core characteristics for these is really that they're looking at the utility of NASA data and how we can use it for applications. We really try to co-develop our projects with our partner organizations as well. Through this work, we know that it's not enough for us to think that a project is interesting and might have some application. We really want to work directly with those decision makers to formulate the project and think about what end products and deliverables would be really beneficial to them. As I mentioned, they're short term, they're only 10 weeks. So we do 3 project terms per year. Again, the project that we're doing with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality will be 10 weeks this summer and then 10 weeks in the fall. And all of our work really aligns with a lot of the work and themes that Lauren already mentioned. So those different thematic areas within NASA's Applied Sciences and Earth Science Division, and those themes that she talked about. We can go to the next slide. And speaking a little bit more about the project partners that we work with, we're really lucky that we work with a very diverse set of project partners, or end users as we call them. This is just a snapshot of what our partners looked like 2 summers ago in summer 2022. We work with anything from state and local governments, federal agencies. Lauren mentioned that some of our projects work with tribal communities. We do projects with nonprofit organizations as well. We have some academic partners. It is really, really variable depending on the project and who are interested in that project at the level. So a lot of our projects are more local in scale. We tend to not do projects that are looking at the entire United States, for example, but projects that are kind of close to home for us here. We did a couple of projects with the city of Hampton a couple of years back. We just did a project that wrapped up with the nonprofit group Wetlands Watch, looking at potential wetland migration in Hampton Roads. And then we have this project with the Department of Environmental Quality. We've also previously partnered with the Virginia DEQ on some water quality issues in the Chesapeake Bay as well. You can go to the next slide, please. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, our participants, so those students and early career folks that come to our program to work on projects. In case anyone out there is interested in working on one of these projects themselves. Our program is really open to anyone over the age of 18. The unique thing about the DEVELOP program is that we're not just a student program. A lot of NASA internships are open to only students, but we are open to anyone over the age of 18. So we do have a diverse group of people that come to our program. It is open to students, as I mentioned, but also recent graduates and early career professionals, folks who are transitioning careers. We have had a participant in the spring and one in the summer as well here at Langley who was a teacher, and she was interested in gaining more geospatial skills for a career transition. And in the past, especially at our location at NASA Langley with its close proximity to the Langley Air Force Base, we have had some military members, active duty and veterans participate in our program as well, which is great. As I mentioned, interdisciplinary backgrounds is something that we really value at our program. We don't have any kind of experience required to participate, really just an interest in things like using satellite data and remote sensing, geographic information systems, and in general kind of science. A lot of the folks who work on the projects do come from STEM backgrounds, but they don't all. It is a paid opportunity where folks work between 20 to 29 hours a week for the 10 weeks. And overall, our program is open to US citizens and foreign nationals. I've very much been talking about the NASA Langley Research Center since that's where this project will be conducted out of. But it is only one of our locations. Develop is a national program. So we have locations all across the United States at NASA centers and then also at some university locations. And our university partners are able to work with international students on projects as well, which is great. And if you want to go to the next slide, please. And then I think lastly here, similar to, again, what Lauren had mentioned about some of those themes for the Equity and Environmental Justice program at NASA, our program as well has had a pretty large set of projects that touch on environmental justice topics. The themes here really mirror the themes that Lauren talked about. Most of our projects have focused on extreme heat and urban heat island effect, urban canopy, tree canopy cover, and usually how that relates to those urban heat issues, flooding, and then also landslide risk. We have had some projects focus on air quality, which we are going to show an example of next. So we've had projects in kind of the environmental justice space in over 12 states. Some of our project partners have been local municipalities and cities, and we've done quite a lot of work with a nonprofit organization called Groundwork USA, and it has local trusts throughout the country. The closest one to us is in Richmond, Virginia, called Groundwork RVA. We've worked with a nonprofit in New York City recently. And so this is just, a snapshot of some of the work that we do kind of related to environmental impacts and environmental justice as well. So I think now, does Shah have the audio working?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound great.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you for the technical difficulties. So again, here I want to show an example of what we can do. As we talk about our community has concern about air quality, right? So here I give example what I've done in California. So in this project, look at the San Joaquin Valley health and air quality. So the community concern is urban heat and also air quality, and also want to understand the social vulnerability. And we partner with Little Manila Rising, and we look at the Stockton, California, and the greater San Joaquin Valley. We look at the NASA data, look at nitrogen dioxide, and the particulate matter from the fire, and also look at the vegetation in the area and try to provide some suggestion where we should plant more trees, like that. Next slide. Little bit about Little Manila Rising. This is a partner we work with. Each of our projects has a partner. Like the project we're going to do with the Newport News project, we are partner with Virginia DEQ that you see, and also partner with you, community. Little Manila Rising is non-profit, recognized advocating for equitable solutions to harmful policies, and strong emphasis on environmental justice and health equity, and founded in 2000, based in Stockton, San Joaquin County. Next slide. So the set of our concerns, we want to look at air quality analysis, heat, and look at the social vulnerability, and create a brochure with the GIS products with information to help inform the impact community. Next slide, please. So this is what our team create. So left you see the nitrogen dioxide, right? So the color red show the high intensity of the pollution. The green show the low pollution. So you can see definitely the high pollution typically is around the cities and around the traffic, the highways, because those are mainly from the vehicle exhaust pollution. And the right one I show this the way combined with the social impact data. Look at, for example, the age, the income, the ethnic group. We consider all the information and create this map. So it's basically you can see the blue show where you see high pollution and also high impact community. So our project is able to create a map like this and show you, okay, where this community, this residential area, it has been impacted higher than other areas. Next slide, please. They also create urban heat. This is a city of Stockton, right? You can see in the city, they always see higher temperature than the surrounding suburban area. So this will show you what our projects can do, and we'll do similar thing for our Newport project. Next slide. So we already briefly talk about the two projects we're going to do in the summer and the fall with the Newport News community. So you already know the issue. We have a coal power issue, and our summer project will look at the coal dust specifically, look at the particulate matter pollution. We will use NASA data and also from the ESA, from European Space Agency, and look at that. But in the fall, we also want to look at the vehicle exhaust pollution, for example, from the highway. So it's the two projects. And again, we are proudly to work with Virginia Department of Environmental Quality together, right? We'll use NASA data and work with the purple airflow data together. Next slide. I think then we're going to give that to Lauren, talk about resource and other outreaches. Yeah.
Thank you, Shao. I'll just talk us through a few different resources that we wanted to point people to. So Tempo was mentioned earlier, but a few of the kind of recent launches were the SWAP mission, the Tempo mission, and the PACE mission. So these are all kind of interesting new missions that we're starting to gather data from and being able to put it out there publicly. And so as Shah and Amanda mentioned, the Tempo mission will be used in the upcoming summer project. There's also the PACE mission, which has aerosol monitoring as part of its mission. And so that's another one that could be explored in future projects. And then looking far, or maybe not too far in the future, but later this year and then into next year, there's NISAR, which is going to be a really great kind of synthetic aperture radar. So that helps understand kind of change of land. And so that's going to have some different applications that'll be woven into projects. And then Maya is another air quality monitoring mission that folks might be interested in. So it's going to be providing various different maps. It has some very focused, I think, geography. So I don't know if our area is entirely covered in it. That's something that we'll be understanding further in the future. And if you are interested in digging into data, the way that NASA puts its data out there is through DACs, and DACs are Distributed Active Archive Centers. And so each of them are organized kind of in a different theme. For instance, there's like a snow and ice data center, and there's the land processing data center and things like that. So those can all be found and kind of seen on that map in the top right. But if you're interested in searching for data, you can use the Earth Data Search. That is kind of a one-stop shop to identify different data sets and where they are. Also, if you're trying to figure out questions about how to access or process or whatever apply the data, the Earth Data Forum is a really great opportunity to ask kind of questions out to the broader community about what kind of data or any kind of issues you're having. And then the DACs are also trying to offer different kind of cloud-based computing resources. And so like the Appears tool is one that helps people be able to efficiently access and play around with the data. Also, the data folks, they have these things called data pathfinders. And so this is a great kind of just what it's called, path to finding the data that you might need. So they organize these by thematic focus as well. So there's one, let's say, on health and air quality, but you can go there and you can look, and it starts to explain if you're interested in looking at this parameter, then these are the different data sets that might be applicable, and it helps kind of introduce you to which data sets would be useful within the kind of broader NASA fleet data. And related to that, there's also the data backgrounders. And so these are kind of informational articles that really kind of start to delve further into like what data can be used for. And so there's various different case studies, and there's a few, there's one that's local here about in Norfolk that's looking at sea level rise that might be of interest to folks. And then there's also an air pollution one. It's on DC, but it would have, kind of relevance like for the topics that are mentioned today. So these are just a few different kind of resources we wanted to mention. And then here is our contact information in case anybody has questions or wants to follow up after today. Feel free to email us. We're always happy to answer questions. And Amanda, do you want me to go to the next slide and talk about that one as well? If you're out there.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So then to close it, there are multiple ways to kind of interact and engage, but one of them is with Develop. And so, as you saw there, Develop is very community focused. The projects are very local. So if there is a specific project idea that you'd like to propose, Develop takes these in and considers them in their future project planning. And right now the planning is for next year, like later ideas for next year and beyond. But then also if you're interested in learning about remote sensing and doing that kind of hands-on experiential learning yourself, then you can also apply to be a participant. And so that application actually just opened, I believe, yesterday. So it's open for roughly 5-6 weeks, whatever that is, for this fall term. So you can see the dates there for the fall, September 16th through November 22nd.
And 2024, but the dates are correct. Just the year.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, not 2023. That was done last year. The term dates are for this fall coming up, and the application is now open. So you have a few weeks to get that in if you're interested, and that would be the continuation. That would be the second term of the air quality project. And I think I'll turn back to the slide before and leave it here, but now we're happy to answer questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat at this time. We do have one hand raised. Lewis, do you have a question? Or it looks like we've got some questions in the chat. Somebody said, wow, that was great. Thanks. Yes, thank you so much, you guys. We really appreciate that and awesome information. Lewis, did you have a question? You can unmute and ask if you'd like at this time. Okay, no worries. Also asked a question in the chat earlier, so we may have already answered it. I don't see any questions at this time, but we will be sending out a follow-up email to everybody who has been registered today. So I can make sure and share that link if folks are interested in the fall semester, as well as everybody's contact information as well, in case questions come up. Looks like we got one in here. Let's see. How has NASA been successful in directly educating residents on the use of NASA data?
I think, so there's a few answers there. So, local to this area specifically, I think there's various different opportunities that we've had. So we had at the NASA Langley open house last fall. I don't know if many folks came to that or not, but that was an opportunity to kind of start to learn a little bit about these things. But really the RSET program is the kind of great outreach tool for learning about things. And then for the summer project, I think the teams will be very involved in participating in any kind of community meetings and sharing their results along the way, as well as at the end. So I think there's an opportunity to engage with the project team once they kind of get started. I don't know, Amanda, if you want to add anything in there, or Shaw, but yeah, I think the RSET program is probably the best kind of educational thing. Also, there's a few different broader NASA programs that are My NASA Data and Globe that are kind of educational resources for, they have everything from what are they called? Course planning documents for teachers and things like that. And then for the getting into the community, I'd say the Develop program is probably the best resource that goes out and participates in various different kind of university activities and other things like that.
Awesome. And it looks like we had a question about contact information in the chat. I believe the contact information is on the screen right now, but I can also follow up with you via email and send it that way as well, if that works.
I just want to add, right? So as a community, if you have a concern, you think maybe our NASA data can help, we are happy to hear your idea. Like what Lauren just showed, you want to partner with us, just like what Grace has done, at the website, you can send your request. So we're happy to work with you. We'll find a participant, work with you, and for you, it's free. And you also can learn with participants at the end of the project. But going to give you the code, we're going to show you how to do everything. So we're going to provide that. So maybe the quicker way is to work with us for a project.
Awesome, thank you so much. I think that might be all of our questions. But thank you all so much. And I just want to encourage folks on the line, if you think of other questions between now and then, please don't hesitate to reach out either directly to all of our wonderful presenters this evening or to me. Please feel free to reach out anytime, and we will make sure you get connected and get your questions answered. And thank you all so much for that wonderful presentation. Very, very helpful. Kind of making sure as we move into the project term that folks know which project is which, right? There's a lot of air quality and DEQ, so we just want to make sure folks know that the TAME project is distinct, and then this awesome initiative with NASA is another initiative in Hampton Roads through the summer and fall. Alrighty, so I think we have 8 minutes left, so I will take the opportunity to ask one more question that I got via email while we were meeting this evening, and I promised to get it asked on air, so I want to make sure to do that. Our question, Chuck, if you're there, you might be able to help answer this one, is whether particulate matter picked up in the monitors will be analyzed as to its chemical composition. Is it coal dust, diesel particulates, auto exhaust, etc., and how much of each?
Yeah, very good question. We're actually focused on toxic metals for this testing, simply because that's where you would expect to see an impact from coal dust on particulate matter, on the collected particulate matter, excuse me. So we won't be speciating beyond those components, that is the particulate metals, unless the data pushes us in a direction that says we need to. That'll be partially including input from the Department of Health, but also as we start collecting the information, the PM10 information, the PM2.5 information, and the particulate, the toxic metals data. If part of that will be taking that data and comparing against other sites, other places in Virginia along the eastern seaboard, things like that. And if that pushes us then to look at other things, then we may start in that direction. Again, something like that, you have to weigh the total effort versus what we have remaining in the budget for this project. But that doesn't mean we won't look at it. We'll just have to go through another source or another direction to get it looked at. But again, the idea here is not to prejudge the data, just know in advance. So we're going to be looking at toxic metals. And then as we get that data, we're going to educate ourselves and see if that data is driving us in a direction to look at other aspects of the project.
Awesome, thank you, Chuck. I'm going to give it one more minute just to give folks a chance if there are any last questions here that we'd like answered before we end tonight. Really appreciate everyone's time tonight. I know it's an evening on a Tuesday and everyone has things going on. So thank y'all so much for taking the time. I will remind folks, if you are watching this via recording and not in real time and you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'll go back to that slide real quick with contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. If you're interested in hosting a purple air sensor, please don't hesitate to reach out. Or if you just have some questions, we'd really love to hear from you. We'll be sending out an email letting everybody know about contact information and any follow-up surveys and good stuff like that. And thank you so much to NASA for agreeing to join us tonight. Very, very awesome, and we really appreciate it. And we actually presented alongside each other at the Hampton Roads Social Justice Conference last month at CNU, so it was a wonderful opportunity to present together again. Looks like we've got one more question here. Thank you. Will the particulates from car tires be tested?
There we go. No, we aren't really looking for that. Again, that doesn't mean that it won't be picked up in the categorical particulate sampling that we do, but we won't be analyzing for, contributions from tires, except to the extent that it contributes to toxic metals. Same with brake wear particulates. With our focus right now is on those toxic metals to see if there is any signatures or any information that would point towards additional testing that we might have to look at.
Awesome. Thank you. Alrighty. I think with that, we will go ahead and end the webinar for this evening. Thank you so much to all of our participants and our presenters, as well as our DEQ staff on the line. Really appreciate everybody working behind the scenes. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, and you'll be hearing from us soon. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.